Hi, welcome to Bite Size Interviews. Today I've got Steve Cavanagh. Steve was born and raised in Belfast before leaving for Dublin at the age of 18 to study law. He currently practices civil rights law and has been involved in several high-profile cases. In 2010, he represented a factory worker who suffered racial abuse in the workplace and won the largest award of damages for race discrimination in Northern Ireland legal history. He holds a certificate in advanced advocacy and lectures on various legal subjects, but really he just likes to tell two young children. The Defence has been chosen as one of Amazon's great debuts for 2015 as part of their Amazon Rising Stars programme. In 2015, Steve received the ACES Award for Literature from the Northern Ireland Arts Council. Steve, you write law-based crime fiction with your protagonist being lawyer Eddie Flynn in the Defence. Writing isn't your only occupation, as we've just heard. You're a working lawyer in Northern Ireland. What is it like living in the real world of the life you write fiction about?
Well, it can be very interesting. My world and Eddie Flynn's world is very different. Eddie's a New York lawyer. I practice in Belfast. Um, we're similar in some ways in that we have quite a mixed practice. I do a mix of civil law and criminal law and public law. So I would do personal injury cases, employment law cases. I would do judicial review in new areas of law like disability discrimination. I'd also do a fair amount of criminal law in the Crown Court, so I have a very mixed bag practice. Eddie would do mostly criminal stuff and a little bit of civil stuff. But the legal training certainly helps in being able to tell a story. That's what I have to do for my clients, is to be able to tell their story. So it helps with storytelling techniques. But other than that, I try to keep it as two different worlds, a professional life and my life as a writer, really.
So, how difficult is it to dip into your real life work for use as a writer?
Well, I would never use real cases that I've been involved in. But sometimes in real world, you see a case and you think, oh, that would be very interesting. In the book I've just written, which is a follow-up to the defence, it's called The Plea. So it's called The Plea at the moment. I haven't heard back from my editor. It may change drastically. But I want to write about fraud, big money fraud in America. So I heard about a guy called Mark Dreyer, who was a lawyer and who basically stole hundreds and thousands and eventually millions of dollars from his clients through a Ponzi scheme, where he would get someone to invest in a fake security bond. He would then, on the strength of that one investment, go to three other investors and say, look, this guy's invested. And on the strength of those three investments, he would pay the first guy a little bit of money. But in the nature of those schemes, they have to keep moving forward. They're like a shark. They have to keep moving forward or they die. So I was very interested in this. So that was part of one of the things that influenced this new book, was to look at big money fraud in some of the big firms in New York, because there's the likes of Bernie Madoff and big names who were caught doing very illegal things. So I was interested in that world and writing a story in that world.
And as far as artistic license goes, how rigid do you like to be in sticking to what it's really like?
I like to give it as much authenticity as I can within the bounds of it being a work of entertainment. I think all crime and thriller fiction, there is always a suspension of disbelief. The vast majority of police work and lawyer work is done in an office, which is not very entertaining for a book. And it's really only small parts of the real job where, detectives are out in the street interviewing people and investigating, or lawyers are in court. So there is some suspension of the reality of things involved in all of that. I always admired Dave Allen, the Irish comedian, who said that never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So I have my story first. If the facts or legal procedures don't fit into that exactly, and I have to change it slightly, I have to see, well, is it possible to change it? the good of the story. If it is, then I have to make it credible. So I do a lot of research in order to make it credible. For example, one of the things that annoyed me recently is Broadchurch, the new series of Broadchurch. I loved the first series, but the second series, I think I watched the second episode, and this is real big spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it. But the guy's confession was thrown out without a voir dire, without him giving evidence or anything. His lawyers basically said, "Can we have it thrown out, please?" And the judge said, "Okay." And I think even non-lawyers find that lacked credibility. So there's a lot of detail in there to make everything credible, so that it all makes sense and is credible within that world. But obviously, I'm sensationalizing it somewhat to make it as entertaining as I can.
Yeah. Is the sense of it wanting to be more entertainment, is that one of the decisions as to why you've moved it into America? Because obviously you're in Northern Ireland, but you've set the defence in the States. Is that one of the reasons that you've done that?
It is one of the reasons. There are a few reasons. Firstly, over here we have a dual system of representation. You have a solicitor and a barrister. And I didn't feel confident when I was writing my first book to be able to write two strong leads. And I thought it might imbalance the book. Whereas if I set it in the States, a single attorney fulfills both of those roles. Um, Also, the entertainment factor. Um, I think British courts, if I wrote about a British courtroom or an Northern Ireland courtroom, I would lean towards satirising that. I think I'm a big fan of John Mortimer, and that world of wigs and gowns and all that formality is still very pompous, and it would be hard to make that very thrilling and exciting. I would just want to satirise it and take the piss out of it, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas America, yeah, it's a lot more sexy and fast, and yeah, that was one of the reasons to make it more entertaining, to make it a thriller. It had to be in the States for me.
And how different is it over there, the law, to how you practice it in Northern Ireland?
Well, a lot of it's kind of the same in terms of how a trial works. And what I wanted to write about, it's almost entirely the same. Um, I've read a lot of legal thrillers, and there's really only a handful of writers like Michael Connelly and Scott Turow, and some Grisham books where they really get the sense of how a trial works, the examination and the cross-examination. Most of the writers don't really get it because it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a real art in itself, particularly cross-examination. It's a real battle of words. Every word said by an attorney in cross-examination is a weapon. It's there for a particular purpose. And the person who's cross-examining might have a list of 15 questions in their head. They're leading the witness down an inevitable path to a sort of an end point of destruction, really. So that is very much the same, and that's what I wanted to write about. In terms of the laws, there are subtle differences. In the States, they have degrees of murder, so they have first and second degree murder and different offences, which we don't have here. They also have the federal system of justice and the state system of justice. So I did do quite a lot of research to discover all that, to make sure that it was authentic and it wasn't making any mistakes. But what I wanted to write about is basically the same.
How did you go about doing that research?
Well, um, I'm sort of trained in how to do legal research, so I can research law in most countries with the internet. You can do it pretty easily now. I have bought and read quite a few textbooks on legal procedure in the States to keep myself right. I also look at a lot of case law online. There is one aspect of the defence. I'm not giving away anything with the plot here, but there's one legal point in it about witness anonymity. So I did a ton of research on that, about what are the rules, how can witnesses be anonymous, and they're mainly police informants, and how they go about giving their evidence. So they're normally identified by their badge number. Their name isn't mentioned. If they're police officers, if they're informants, they would have a false name and identity. And I wanted to see how that interacts in terms of the Constitution and your right to face your accuser. What are the things the judge considers? So I did tons of research about that. Read all about the Serpico case. I don't know if you've seen Serpico with Al Pacino. That's based on a real
No.
case about a police informant. So all of that research, which is probably several hours, really only came down to a couple of sentences in the book. But I really wanted to know all of that, so I was informed in writing it, and that I can get it quite succinctly, so that it doesn't interfere with the story, and everyone knows what's going on.
And that's a sign of good research, the fact that you did all that research, but it was only a couple of sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the defence, you make reference to the fact that being a lawyer is similar to being a con artist, and you evidence that in the book quite well. And sometimes you actually had me laughing out loud at some parts of it. Is that a belief system that you actually hold?
I don't know if it's a belief system. I think it's true. I think there's a lot of crossover of skill, particularly when someone's being cross-examined. Um, I think you can mention it, but lawyers don't ask a question unless they know the answer. That's because they give you the answer that they want in the question in terms of how the question is framed. They're there to control that witness and to get them around to their way of thinking and their case. But it doesn't even have to be in the way they ask questions. Um, an example in defence about Clarence Darrow and little tricks that he used to do. John Mortimer used to talk about a very famous British advocate called Sir Edward Marshall Hall. And when he came into court for a murder trial, he would bring with him a mysterious floral patterned bag, 2 carafes of water, and a big pile of handkerchiefs. When the prosecution was presenting their case, and their case was going really well, he would lift the handkerchiefs off the desk and start blowing his nose to distract the jury. If it got worse, he would spill the water dramatically to try and distract the jury. And if it was going really bad, he very slowly unzipped the floral bag and took out an inflatable cushion, which he blew up because he had piles. And it was well known in the bar that Sir Edward Marshall Hall suffered very badly from piles. So the judge wouldn't interfere, whether the bar is obviously in some pain if he had to do this. But he would create this whole pantomime in order to distract the jury from the evidence. So it's part of the game. I think it's not necessarily a good thing, but we have an adversarial system of justice, so evidence has to be tested in the most rigorous manner.
Yeah. I finished the book and thought, if I get into trouble, I want you to represent me.
No problem, that's fine. Thank you.
So, yes. Will we be seeing more of Eddie Flynn in the future?
We will indeed, yeah. I finished the second book. I'm sort of waiting to go through edits with that with my editor in the UK. I'm writing a novella at the moment as part of my Arts Council Award. So you should see that novella before you see the second book. And the novella is a prequel to the defence. Takes place about a year before the events in the defence happen. And then I'm writing a third book. I have the idea for that, but I haven't started writing it yet. But I'm hoping that Eddie's still a character I love writing about. I can say what I want to say through him and explore what I want to explore through this character. So I think I'll be writing about him as long as people like him and like reading about him for a long time to come.
Brilliant. He's a great character.
Thanks,
Thanks very much, Steve.
thanks very much, Rebecca. It's been a real pleasure.
Great, thank you.